For months it wasn't supposed to be this way. He didn't want it this way. But suddenly, he was in charge of the entire world. How the United States went from war weariness to stopping a war? For the people of the United States, the conflict feels endless. But before he can send it, he suffers a stroke and dies. He inherits a divided nation, a wounded world, and a deadly decision. What should he do? Should he accept his predecessor's plan and fight for Berlin, or should he pull out? With renewed determination, he turned his attention back to the pressing matters of state. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button, because in part 2, we will see how Truman solved both of his problems and the world as we know it was created in the process. The decision regarding the war in Europe was a weighty one. On one hand, he had inherited President Roosevelt's plan to intensify the war effort, which promised victory, but at what cost? More American lives lost, more families torn apart by grief. Yet the alternative, pulling out, risked leaving the United States vulnerable in the aftermath of a German victory. Torn between his duty to his country and the heavy toll the war was taking, Truman grappled with the moral implications of each path. Meanwhile, the threat of Soviet spies lurked in the shadows, a hidden danger that could undermine his every move. As Truman wrestled with these monumental decisions, the clock was ticking. Each day brought new challenges and the stakes could not be higher. How would he balance the competing demands of foreign policy and domestic concerns? Could he trust anyone? And ultimately, what legacy would he leave behind? He weighs up both options and tries to decide what's best for his country. But time is running out. As Truman thinks about the decision, we need to talk about the man sitting in the Oval Office. What did Truman actually look like? How did he act? Well, his appearance was quite deceiving because underneath that seemingly calm exterior beat the heart of a lion. Standing at 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing around 170 pounds. Truman may have been short in stature, but his presence was anything but. With his signature wide-brimmed hat shielding his intense blue eyes, he cut a striking figure that demanded respect. But it was his personality that truly set him apart. Despite the immense pressures of the presidency, Truman remained remarkably down to earth. He enjoyed a good laugh, cracking jokes, and teasing those around him, including his wife Bess, whom he affectionately called B. His folksy charm and down-to-earth demeanor made him instantly likable and approachable. But don't be fooled by his affable nature. Behind that folksy facade lay a steely determination and resilience that belied his relatively small stature. Truman possessed an indomitable spirit, a tenacity that would see him through some of the most challenging moments in American history. He was a man who seemed larger than life, a true testament to the idea that good things often come in small packages. With their president incapacitated and the fate of the world hanging in the balance, the vice president steps in. His name was Harry S. Truman. Spies had infiltrated the highest levels of the U.S. government. The Soviets had managed to place moles within the White House, giving them access to confidential information and potentially compromising national security. This revelation left Truman feeling betrayed and determined to uncover the extent of the Soviet Union's infiltration. The implications were staggering. If the Soviets had planted spies throughout the government, who could they trust? Had sensitive information already been compromised? The stakes were high as Truman initiated a series of covert investigations to root out the moles, but as he grappled with this critical issue, another pressing concern loomed on the horizon. The war in Europe was rapidly approaching its climax, and Truman faced a pivotal decision. Should he follow through with President Roosevelt's plan to intensify the war effort or chart a different course for the United States? Faced with these dual crises, Truman's leadership and resilience were put to the ultimate test. How would he navigate the treacherous waters of Cold War espionage, while also making life-altering decisions about the war? Would he be able to protect his country from external threats while simultaneously safeguarding its secrets from within? The fate of the nation, perhaps even the world, hung in the balance as Truman took the first steps in what would become a defining chapter in American history. He was born in 1884 on a farm in Missouri. His father had worked on a ranch in the Wild West, and from a young age, he taught his son the importance of honesty and hard work. "Don't lie," he said, "and don't cheat. Tell the truth and work diligently." His mother was a former school teacher who raised her son to be respectful and caring, and it seemed that the young Harry had listened. He was hard-working, honest, sincere, and patriotic. He believed in America and its people. He loved his country more than anything else in the world. But despite his upbringing, Harry struggled at first. He didn't go to college, he didn't have any special skills, and he wasn't particularly smart. In fact, When he got his first job working in a post office, his boss told him that he was the most inept worker he had ever seen. But Harry didn't care. He loved his job. He worked hard and slowly but surely he began to excel. He rose through the ranks and eventually ended up becoming the postmaster of Grandview, Missouri. It was here where he met the love of his life, a woman named Bess Wallace. She was beautiful and intelligent, and the two fell in love immediately. But while she loved Harry, she knew that he was meant for bigger things. And with her support, he ran for public office. He started small, becoming a judge in Jackson County. But again, he worked hard, excelled in his role, and then moved on to bigger and better things. He became a senator in 1935, representing Missouri. And this is where his career really took off. Here he met some of the most powerful people in the world, including Franklin D. Roosevelt. When Roosevelt came to power in 1933, he appointed Truman as the chairman of the Senate's Democratic Committee. It was a huge honor, and one that put Truman in the spotlight. But Truman never forgot where he came from. He was a simple guy who liked simple things. Sure, he enjoyed being in the limelight, but he didn't let it change him. And when Roosevelt passed away, the American people were ready for more of the same. They needed someone who wouldn't let power go to their head, someone who would make the right decisions, even if they weren't popular. And they thought they had found that man in Harry. As Truman, the country has endured attack after attack from the Japanese, and now more than 3 million men and women have been mobilized into the military, a full 10% of the population. People are tired. They are sick of the war. All they want to do is get back to normal life. This sentiment is shared by the president, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt is a war leader like no other. His speeches inspired the nation. He led them through the Great Depression and gave them hope for the future. But even he is ready for the war to be over. There is just one problem, though. The fighting is not coming to a natural conclusion. In fact, things are only getting worse. As the Allies race towards Berlin, Roosevelt gets word that Germany is planning to fight to the very end. They will not surrender. Hitler will die in his bunker and take as many people with him as possible. This news infuriates Roosevelt. At this point, there is only one option. They must take the fight directly to the heart of Germany. They must fight for Berlin, but doing so would be costly. Very costly. It would mean hundreds more dead Americans. It would mean more mothers crying over their dead children. It would mean more families torn apart by war. And this is something that Roosevelt doesn't want to see anymore. But it's not just the lives of his people he's worried about. If they push too far, they might win the war. But at what cost? What kind of world will be left for the next generation? So Roosevelt comes up with a plan to end the war and save American lives. But it's a dangerous plan. It could end with the deaths of thousands of U.S. soldiers. He knows this, but he believes it's worth the risk. And we will see how it all came down to 4 very important months in history. For months that changed the world forever. We will also answer the big question. What would happen if you woke up tomorrow morning and were in charge? Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to look at an extraordinary story of how one man became the leader of the free world by accident. It is March 1945 and the Second World War has been raging for almost 6 years. On March, Roosevelt sits down and writes a letter to the American people explaining why they must fight for Berlin. Truman takes the oath of office and becomes the 33rd President of the United States. As the leader of the free world, Truman received intelligence that shook him to his core. As the weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him, Truman drew strength from the words of his mother, who had instilled in him the values of hard work, honesty, and integrity. Well, that's the end of part 1.